worry about profitability later. And so some companies are declaring dividend. That means, and it tells me it's a signal that are they thinking through this whole thing, both in terms of medium to short to long-term decision. It then raises the questions around liquidity and around incentives. Now you have a challenge where some people are earning money around an incentive-based system. In a situation of the lockdown, they are basically not earning anything as well. And so you have poaching staff. With Mr. Sonowosu, oh, thank you. There's also the other issue which you see has been done very well on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, which is about disclosures. Everything that happens within companies are coming out, issuing press releases. There is an increasing atmosphere of disclosure, which would help the whole system. But most importantly, what will begin to happen is a realignment of your board composition right now. You would then have to infuse your board level with certain people who can actually help you through this transition in terms of having everybody understand the issues come together. So you may need to change one or two things around.
Oh.
The last one being the one 1991, 1993, which IMF intervened, but the recent one is the 2008, 2009 version. We expect that this one will go up, but for each of those recessions, you've seen an uptick in technology usage. And so we do not expect it to be any different from now. I'll take a pause to allow others to speak.
Thank you, Femi. Thank you. And I noticed that someone also has joined us. If we remember from the beginning, BC told us about the issue of annual filings and how we can deal with the situation. She also spoke to us about approach for annual general meetings, and she shared a personal experience. And then Femi has also walked us through the reality of the dynamisms involved that is beyond the boardroom, that has to do with management of people, consistency issues, and even the issues of confidentiality, risk, and also transparency. Thank you very much. Sanwosu, we're happy to see you. I have a question for you. For those of us who do not know Sanwosu, we need a bit more light for Sanwosu so that people can see, okay, emeritus for the Independent Shareholders Association of Nigeria. So Sanwosu, with your depth of experience in dealing with shareholder issues and engagement of the boards, and in requesting for the rights of shareholders in terms of disclosures and business continuity. Can you please just give us an insight into expectations of the independent shareholders in terms of, in this dynamism, especially picking what I said about what my sister BC said, and the issue about the filing, virtually, and all that, and what Femi had mentioned about the looking at this beyond the boardroom, because at the end of the day, what happens in management and within the system is actually the real continuity issue. What is the expectation of independent shareholders? How would the company and the boards meet?
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you to those that have contributed to this issue. I appreciate the questions, and I will, in fact, I met Femi talking about dividend and withdrawing, boosting the finances of a company. Now, that interests me so much because I represent the shareholders. Now, the shareholders' salary is actually based on the dividend they receive from their investments. And as a result of that, Femi may be talking from the angle of a certified person in his field, but the poor masses that bought into the capital market, actually the intention is to receive a reward at every end of the month. And that is why in most cases, they do not interfere with the working of the directors. All they ask from the directors is pay us our own wage. And what is our own wage? Is the dividend. So if you are plugging back dividend, it is better you do not announce the dividend at all before plugging back, because the report you are going to give to the shareholders will clearly say that in view of the situation at hand, we are not declaring any dividend. And this is an authority given to the board to decide the future of the company. So there will not even be any need talking about plugging back a dividend. But the fact remains that at the AGM, shareholders will demand what they feel strongly belongs to them. Now, and that's why we're also supporting the proxy meetings, because most of us are talking about palliatives and this and that. The palliative of shareholders, which they are sure of, is the dividend they are going to get from the company. And it's a win-win game. So that is that. We will not take a situation where a company is having money and you are saying you are not paying dividend. We ask questions. What reason do you have for not paying dividend? Because it is the right of shareholders to receive a return after every year's work. But the fact again, the danger of it is that if shareholders feel strongly that the directors in that company is not really protecting their interests by giving them something to go home, they also have a right to vote out that director. So Femi is seen from the group of elites in this country that whether he has shares in any company or not, he will feed well because of those he's interacting with. We are very much aware of that. So by coming to technology, the issue of COVID-19 has actually torn up a lot of things, the importance of technology. But again, it's a two-edged sword. Yes, if you cite technology, it reduces the workforce and then we should be prepared. If there is no opportunity for people to work, then we should also be prepared for whatever is going out there. We have more robbers, we have more petty thieves outside there. So people must be engaged to have something doing, despite the technology or no technology. Disclosure is very important. I am very much opportune by the grace of God to have served on the three edges of corporate governance: the audit committee, the board, and as of today, I chair a PLC board. Despite all the gurus we had there, they found me, very appropriate to be their chairman. And these are things we are talking about. Disclosure is very important. That is exactly what the shareholders want. Disclose to them what is happening. But of course, there's still a board secret in everything we do. Because the board will continue to try to manage, to clean up the dirty aspects, not to come and report that. After clearing it out, it will then be desirable to announce what we have gone through about that. Filing is a regulatory requirement. Filing is a regulatory requirement that nobody can run away from it. So far, I don't know whether I had a sound, whether my time is up.
Thank you. Wonderful. Now you see the value you bring to this conversation. Thank you very much. And we're so happy too that now we can see your face. At the beginning, we couldn't see your face. And some of the people were asking that they want to see some also. Thank you very much.
You know, I am not a masquerade, so definitely I'm out there to be seen by everybody.
Thank you very much. Now we have wrapped up on the issue of the process. We said with the COVID-19, it's changed so many things for us as companies, as directors, and all that, and how organizations run, especially as applicable to governance. BC showed us the requirements for filings and even shared experience on annual general meeting. Femi showed us that while we are directors, we should recognize that the continuity issues, sometimes most of it goes beyond the board. It goes down to how we deal with staff issues, how we deal with disclosures, how we deal with risk and mitigation approaches, and also how our regulators see and whether our current regulations are actually sufficient to deal with the issues at hand today. So I also brought the perspective of the independent shareholder about the issue of dividend, which was where Femi landed, that there's an expectation on the shareholders. The essence of all this is so that all the key stakeholders within a 360-degree form all feel attended to and we can all negotiate going forward. So the next round, as I had said, we have 3 layers of discussions. After that, we'll open up for questions and answers. The second round of discussions is about the frameworks. The frameworks that existed before now absolutely will not carry us into the future. So the conversation in the next round of questions for our distinguished panelists has to do with this disruption has brought about different things. what are the implications on this for leadership, resilience of the systems, and how do we need to look at our frameworks and our policies and all that going forward? My sister BC will start for us, and she also, I'm sure she has a response to something that Selwas has said. So BC, what do you foresee as further changing post-COVID-19 in terms of board induction? Because at the end of the day, it's about the players and actors in governance. What do you see in terms of board induction, in terms of capabilities for directors, in terms of how we hold our board retreats, how we hold our board trainings? We have also explored how we do annual general meetings. So just give us on that, and anything you want to respond to in what someone was.
Thank you.
There won't be a going back and forth.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lucy. I just would like to make a brief comment on what Sanwosu said regarding dividend and the payment thereof. And I think he was also responding to what Femi had said. So to start with, I think it's important that we recognize that, you know, these are strange times. These are unprecedented times, as everybody has said. And liquidity for the enterprise is critical, is very important. So is sustainability. So it's when the company can be here from year to year that it can pay dividend. So I think at this point, it's important for there to be continuous engagement. And Sam also referenced that as well. You know, so management, the board needs to constantly communicate with shareholders. They disclose the company's financial position as it is. Company is not going to borrow money to pay dividend. Obviously, dividend would have to be from profit, you know, but profit at this time, also, we need to determine what's the best use of the profit. Is it better, you know, to plow the profit back so that we can continue to be sustainable as a business? Femi referenced HR issues. You know, a lot of companies are doing, as far as I'm concerned, they're setting themselves up for litigation. You know, they're cutting salaries unilaterally, they're converting stay at home to leave, they're doing all sort of things, you know, that at the end of the day, we're going to have a lot of litigation on our hands. So I think it's important to quickly draw that line. You know, I know that one of the main reasons why companies hold AGMs is to declare the dividend, but guess what? The directors are the ones that recommend the dividend. There is also the latitude for directors to declare interim dividend, you know, which they can pay without recourse to an AGM. That's when they find that indeed the cash flow can accommodate for them to do that. But back to the question that you have asked in terms of what should change about the framework, before I even lots of the time people have risk management framework, and sometimes you ask them, oh, you know, it's domiciled with either the risk committee or the risk department. It's obvious now that the entire board has to refocus attention on risk management. Identify the critical risk. I mean, nobody foresaw COVID-19. Yes, indeed, you know, but it's a pandemic. So now those are things that we have to begin to incorporate into our risk management. Scenario planning. What happens, you know, if in the next XYZ number of months we're unable to pay salaries? What happens if we run out of cash? What happens? So risk management definitely has to be at front burner of boards. The other one is diversity, and I'm not talking about diversity in terms of gender, but diversity in terms of skills. What's the process of appointing the right directors on the board? Directors that can, you know, add value at times such as this. We cannot continue to appoint directors based on some, you know, some factors of who do I know and what's person bringing in terms of connections and all of that. But in terms of expertise, competence, agility to act, you know, to be able to, because right now at this point, because things are changing so fastly and so rapidly, the board needs to act with agility and support the CEO to be able to act. Another framework that needs to change and be looked at is the delegation of authority. So we ask clients, you know, do you have delegation of authority? And they bring out their mandates, their signature mandates or their authority limits as to expenditure. That's not what the delegation of authority is. What authority has the board ceded to the CEO to be able to act? What authority has the board retained for itself because at this time, it's critical that decisions are well thought through, and that you also give the CEO the flexibility to act, whilst not taking away the board's responsibility to lead and to provide oversight. So in terms of training, induction, honestly, it just means that these things have to be focused on what's important. Boards have to be reminded of their core responsibilities. I can also imagine that those responsibilities are going to have to change. Those responsibilities are going to change from your typical, there's providing oversight, they're providing leadership, and those have to be clearly defined. I've run at least 2 virtual trainings since this pandemic and sit at home lockdown started. So it's possible to do virtual trainings. People shouldn't be concerned about the fact that, how then do we train our board, but it's important that the content of the training now goes beyond the regular. We have to upskill ourselves with risk management. We have to upskill ourselves with what's a business continuity plan. I mean, Femi had, distinguished between the two. So there's business contingency, like you said, but there's business continuity. How do we continue to run our operations? So those things have to be brought to the fore of board induction, board training. Directors need to reassess and re-understand and re-educate themselves. It's not going to be business as usual. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Great. Thank you, VC. You've taken a lot for us. Very interesting, the frameworks and how the templates have to be altered and how we have to adjust in the unfolding scenario. Now, Femi, I always have this temptation of putting the IT-based questions to you, but I want to give you a double barrel question now. What are the demerits and merits of these virtual meetings and attendant risks? She just told us about the training she just had and all that. You, given your IT background, what are the merits and demerits, especially with regards to the quality of the members' contribution on boards, with regards to confidentiality of deliberations? We just had the issue about Zoom being questioned, and they had to add up the security and the password aspect. And then this risk of technology failure. We have witnessed a few ourselves here, right, on this webinar. And then the other issue of cybersecurity. But above all, I want you to tie this in within the leadership dynamism of the board. What is this?
Okay, so your question, if you take it very well and you go look at it from corporate governance, you're basically describing what the requirements in the news, the best practice standard for companies. They will have to report on cybersecurity now. They have to report on business contingencies. They have to report. So you would assume that all these things are naturally taken together into it. So if you take the easiest one, is there. Right now, companies must understand that the curve for misinformation and disinformation is actually climbing up. One thing it has to do is to find a first-effective means to communicate within his own organization in a very clear, unambiguous, and honest matter about what he wants to do and to reach out. I'll take the example of what BC, let me piggyback on what BC said concerning virtual meetings and the fact that certain members do not support the virtual component in it. And indeed, some of them who do may impose specific requirements. So the simple thing about the merits and demerits is that you'll find that there are more merits, but the demerits are such significant that people haven't taken attention. Let me start from the demerits that I know. One, in reducing face-to-face interactions, it's a really significant thing because that's the way in which you put a face to your shareholders and you manage the relationship. But guess what? The shareholder demographic and structure is also changing. As Sanwosu may piggyback on this later on, but it's changing. There's also a second thing. One, it hinders, this virtual thing hinders shareholders' activity. And I put that one in just to make sure that Sanwosu will smile at me. But there are also some other clear ones. The drawback of unpredictability in voting, whereby last-minute changes may occur and people can vote and be there, which may take away the issues or the advantages. One of the key advantages I see from that is the fact that they can send in questions. There could be anonymity in terms of questions. And it also promotes the brand as technologically savvy. But to the issue as to where the security, cyber security, all those other things, like any other technology, for God's sake, there are issues around this. So we should not overhype the problem or make the what I call the solution much more complex than than the problem. Here is what will happen. Here's what, from a technology, from a business development perspective, from a governance perspective. In a very short space of time, companies will be required to focus and indeed, more likely, recalibrate aspects of their corporate strategy, their risk management framework, the funding structure, and the capital market strategy, apart from so many, including product development. The impact of the decisions that will come from all this will be far-reaching, not just in terms of the short to medium term, but most importantly, about the long-term sustainability of the companies. And in fact, the directors and officers, which goes to my question, which I mentioned about dividend. It wasn't a case of you paying dividend, because there's always the age-old argument about dividend or capital appreciation. Right now, your focus is on sustainability. And as such, because everything, significant things from a corporate governance is that a board should be sitting down and discussing what significant changes are affecting our corporate strategy right now. What are the changes within our risk management framework? Because you see, the missing link here and the difference between any other of those crises we face, different from the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, is that there's a contagion effect. Because you are not doing well, the other person is not doing well, the economic value chain that we normally know and associate with each other has been altered. And so you may game plan for yourself. If the other person hasn't game plan for itself, you will bear the consequences of his own inefficiency. Yet, as well, there is also the opportunities that we should focus on. You see, those companies that will succeed will not be the companies who will start from tomorrow to plan. There will be those companies who have actually thought through some of these things before and have planned for possibilities that may occur. Even though it is trite that nobody expected the pandemic to be this serious, that may not be factually accurate. In the world of analysis, there are always what they call scenario planning. And as such, people have game planned a scenario like this, especially for bigger companies. However, something changed differently. What changed differently was the scale. Was the scale of how we did it. So let me wrap up by saying something that what I see happening in Nigeria is that the definition of winners and losers are still being written right now. And so people have a chance to put themselves in a better position to succeed. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Femi. Femi is always giving us a practical perspective. So I have a question for you. And then there are some comments that I have come across in the chat. Without actually naming the person who spoke about it. Some people say they didn't agree with you on the issue of the shareholders actually requesting for dividend at a time like this. Companies are not now running down in terms of profitability. Some of them actually, not it's operational technically, it's ground level zero. And many organizations, as our sister BC said, are coming up with different ways of trimming down the payroll, and that some may even have litigation the way they are going about it. So many people that are chatting here say there's need in time of crisis and disruption. Survival is the first thing, and everybody is paying a price. So should also be understanding. But given that context, how would you explain to us the best way for boards and companies to maintain this communication flow with, so that these perspectives all come across, and at the end of the day, everybody is on the same page. There's no conflict, there's no misunderstanding. What would the companies and the boards do that will make the shareholders to just appreciate the situation, so that at the end of the day, it's all about survival and business continuity as a going concern for the companies?
Okay, thank you very much. In the first place, I saw what Akin Roko, my good friend, just sent out. He's actually asking a question: is it not when there's profit that company pays dividend? That is very clear. No shareholder will ask the companies to go and borrow money to pay dividend. That's the reporting of the company. Yes, they are going to pay X, Y. Also take consideration the salary of this company. And not saying that they will make their salary. The company cannot exist without shareholders. It is here that please, whatever you have charged, all this talking will not be very palatable to. So what we are saying, we have to correct issues, is that companies that make profits and are comfortable will have to declare dividend, because that is our own salary. That is our own salary. That is very clear. Any company that does not have arrangement for a risk, a corporate risk management manager, is actually heading to a doom, because all companies must have risk managers to examine whatever you are going into, whether what you are going into will be comfortable to the company. That is very obvious. We didn't just start all this, but the fact is that we have a template that whatever you are doing, you want government to create enable environment for you to achieve what you are doing. And if government fails to give such a situation, enabling environment, it means that everything will just be a guesswork in this country. See what is happening when we are talking about Nigeria and foreign companies. There have been palliatives. You don't even need to cry for it. Just go to the bank, you get your money, which the government has made available for you. But in Nigeria, you continue to pursue even trailers with rice. Sometimes it will crush those who are hoping to collect rice from. So this is a different platform entirely. So give dividend to shareholders, and they understand that there is no dividend. So understand that most of those people are not really shareholders. They are not really shareholders. Some of them are consultants and all this and that, so that the company will have money to pay them for their. Always trust. So it's an easy thing for you to communicate with them, and shareholders will understand what you are going through. That is very, very important. Right. So when we talk of diversity on the board, now it's part of the regulatory requirement that you have to give the diversity on the board. Wonderful. So that the regulators will understand and advise. So that's no issue at all. So interim dividend, for instance, when we got into this situation we found ourselves now, the Independent Shareholders Association sent out a memo to SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, that let companies pay interim dividend. When they pay interim dividend, you do not need all this issue of 5 persons being at AGM, proxy AGMs and all this and that. When the situation improves, all we need to do is to ratify the interim dividend as the final dividend, which you have declared. So there's so many ways to handle interim dividend and all this. But interim dividend on its own is a function of telling your shareholders that we are doing well within the period. Therefore, we can pay interim dividend. If at the end of the year and there is no final dividend, we will understand that we have taken opportunity of the interim dividend and the devaluation of the Naira. It's very important, just like salaries for employee and the other people.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we also look forward to a future when shareholders will also see things like earning per share, assets per share, return on investment, return on equity as a standard for performance, even as the liquidity aspect is also very important. Thank you very much.
Sorry, before you go, let me just tell you one thing, because those are yardsticks that shareholders today look into. We want to see earning per share, this and that, to really understand what is the era of our fathers and forefathers not taking into those things into consideration is over. For example, in independent shareholders, we review your account totally and tell you the way we saw your account, and we pass it to the companies to see, and director sits on it. And because we are representing shareholders, and our position is judge or not war.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I learned of recent, one of my friends who is also a consultant told me that they called him independent shareholders. They wanted to have analytical skills, analyzing financial reports. And I was like, wow, they're really getting geared up. Thank you very much, sir, also for the contribution. I said earlier, we have layers of questions, layers and layers of questioning. And then we're going to open for questions. So far, I can see that we have 10 questions on queue. We will soon open for questioning. But as we wrap up, I want one minute overview. It's not your wrap up, it's not your summary yet. You're going to summarize after the Q&A. but I want our three panelists to just give us, if there are two things you foresee as disruption and people should be looking out in terms of corporate governance going forward. I want my sister BC to tell us the key competencies for company secretaries and what you foresee for the emerging role of a company secretary going forward, as well as directors and the competencies required. I would like Femi to tell us in terms of chairman of the board, what skills and competencies you foresee and what word do you have for our regulators in terms of all this. So also, so how the shareholders need to get enlightened and get educated and change their format of engaging the companies, so that maybe all our shareholders should write their emails very clearly when they attend meetings in the register, so that people can reach them by WhatsApp, by Telegram, and by email. So 1 minute by each and every one of us, starting with BC. Then thereafter, we'll open up for questions. As I said, the Q&A tab is at the base of the screen. If you have a question, go in there and type it in. Somebody is asking about HR practices and all that. I think without us digging too much into the HR space, we have dealt with a broad board framework, and we've also said the implications as regards to legality of certain practices. I'm just responding to a chat by somebody who is saying that we didn't take enough of HR. The session is not HR. IOD's mandate is governance, but we have actually taken the whole gamut of the entire enterprise, and we've also delved into the emerging practices, and we have been cautioned that many of our emerging practices in HR during this period would actually be areas for litigation in the near term. So let's take 1 minute, and then after we'll open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. I just wanted to quickly advise the participants, because I've seen some questions on the chat box. We're going to miss those out. So I'd just like to advise that they put their questions in the Q&A. And Lucy, if you permit me, I just quickly want to respond to a question that was put on the chat, because you might have missed it in the Q&A. So the person is asking that with lockdown, the issue of attending AGMs, 25 people being present and all of that, how do you prevent people from being harassed by overzealous security agents? So the reference to holding AGM obviously doesn't apply during the lockdown. It would be illegal, because the issue about 25 people and all of that congregating is a Lagos State directive. The lockdown is a federal backed by so we don't expect that, because that's an essential duty. But whatever the CC has addition, it's obviously not expected to be during the period of lockdown. So what are the skills and competencies required of directors going forward? There's we can't emphasize that. As you're using digital, that's where most things are making now. Meeting all and well, very comfortable. We're not ensure that all and then doing so they feel this and bring best practice to their own boards. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, T. Femi?
Quite a lot to unpack, and I hope the next time I would have more time for myself. But let me go straight to the issue of skills and competencies required. The most significant thing is the duty of care. See, the most significant body on any board right now is the duty of care on directors, but not just directors and officers of the company would be changing. Now, let me just mention 3 good examples to just make it clear. There is financial pressure during a crisis, both on the individuals, and so we will have to lift the mask that it is not happening. It is real. And so this will test their internal procedures, their governance, their values, and their competencies, because they'll have to make way for each other. In organizations where you have those conflicts, whereby the standards for conflict of interest are just simply for you to disclose, the standards for conflict of interest is far higher right now, because the error rate is also high. That's 1. 2. There is the risk of personal liability has gone up much more higher right now. And companies may have to consider adopting what they do in Canada, for example, where they do directors' liability insurance. It then becomes another key thing that must be taken now. So if you're going to be a director, they must be ready to take on a director's liability insurance for you, because you will be exposed to far more risk than you can even imagine. The other one has to do with the skill and agility. I mean, 2 keywords that's normally not used for directors, but used for staff, because they would need to strike the right balance in taking appropriate governance actions during the crisis, and some of which may also lead to liability as well. The fourth one perhaps may be the post-crisis review. The ability to sit down, to understand that and audit the capacity of that board, that were they able to be one of the most
that would be a good landing point. And thank you, BC, for that, picking up the question from the chat, the teamwork. So that is very helpful. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A. You're going to answer a lot because many of them are legal issues. So also, any comment just before we go to short one?
Very quickly, I appreciate Femi's 1 minute content, but just to say that some of the board have started doing that in order to give the opportunity to their directors to act properly, not theoretically, but practically, because some of these things you hear a lot of theory, especially from the consultants, but the practical aspect, is very important. Sometimes there is difference between the two of them. There's a wide gap between theory and practical. So, but however, for shareholders to further understand the working of directors, there is need for engagement. And this engagement, so that it will go around at the same time or according to corporate governance regulation. They could just pick up a newsletter and send out, as their registrars, to send out the newsletters to all the shareholders to really understand what is going on there. Two, it is very important that the directors must understand that both old and young, who are their shareholders, they must also give them respect as what we call foundation member of any company. It's very, very important. Three, the directors must also recognize the function of audit committee members who are representing shareholders on the committee, because there is a big gap between the function of audit committee, the function of audit committee of the board, and the function of the board itself, the way they see audit committee. Most companies give high respect to audit committee because they do their recommendation, while majority of them do not respect audit committee. But the most important thing is that there should be a respect for the seed providers, even though at the end of the day, the whole thing is a stakeholder. But the seed providers, I want them to give that respect to them. And they too, by exchange, will also give respect to the working and understanding that the directors are really working hard for you. And that's the way the shareholders will understand and they work together as a stakeholder and as a team to improve the fortune of a company.
Thank you very much, Sanwosu. That was very, very insightful. We also know that because we used to that was the thing, now the direction is heading towards society and the customer. So now we're about to open for questions. Panel, we have, I'm going to apply an accounting principle. First in, first out. Otherwise, if we say last in, first out, won't be fair to those who posted early. So to be fair to those who posted early, and then the late posters, we'll see how time goes. We'll apply the principle of first question in, first out. The first question is by Chinedu Ozo. He said the issue for me is preparedness of the board for the disruptions occasioned by the current pandemic, given the board's oversight responsibilities of company risk. What will be the best option for companies who were unable to insure their businesses against unforeseen disruptions before the pandemic, and should this be considered a mandatory requirement for companies going forward? I think we spoke about the issue of, I think Femi was one that talked about the fiduciary responsibilities and insurance for directors. Insurance is a very interesting issue, but does any of the, Chinedu did not address any person in particular, but who want to give, Femi, you want to say something about that since you spoke about the liability issues, or will it be BC?
I don't mind to take it. I can quickly jump in. In on it. So first of all, how do you handle risk? There's some risk. You first of all partition your risk. Assess them. There's some that you can avoid, There's some that you can pass on to somebody else, which is the insurance, and there's some that you just have to look for mitigants, beyond insurance. So you cannot insure every risk that your business would encounter. So those ones that you can insure, but please by all means insure. And I like the point that Femi has raised about even directors insuring themselves. Because liabilities obviously are going to increase. So is director liability insurance one thing that insurance companies should begin to look at now? I think so. But beyond that, the risk management it's an entire framework that runs through the entire gamut of the organization. So directors need to be more on top of it. That's what I would say. They need to be more on top of it. Assess every aspect of the operations. Liquidity itself is a risk. If you don't have proper liquidity, you cannot run. That's a risk that should be envisaged, and that's a risk that a lot of companies are going to have to deal with now that we're in COVID-19 and post COVID-19 as well. So yes, insurance is good, but just to be clear that you cannot insure all your risks. There's some risks that you can't even anticipate anyway, and even if you do, it's not all the risks that the insurance companies themselves would want to take on.
Thank you, BC. Incidentally, the next question is actually yours too, from Femi Jayasini, specifically to BC.
Well, let me say something. BC, thank you for helping clarify this. But there is a particular point I want to raise about risk management as part of the duty of care. And you are absolutely correct. It's not every risk. Whereas you must be able to identify them. You see, the duty of care requires you to be able to identify them and then mitigate against them. Even by identifying them, it's actually part of risk management. Well, here are those risks which directors may have to apply their mind to. You see, the inconsistent and disruptive management around this risk resulting from poor communications with customer, or something happened you did not, we haven't yet sat down to really identify that your inability to provide me with a service, those contracts you entered into with me did not envisage for a force majeure of such a nature that will there. For example, my internet service provider who hasn't been giving me proper service, if he hasn't, then if I have an issue with him, do I seek redress? There's a whole gamut of things which we haven't thought through that normally comes as part of the crisis. The easier ones are the cybersecurity issues we see, the attacks on banks we see. But you guess what? The liability of the director owing the duty of care to the company is that he cannot use this as an excuse for a failure of the company. You have to do something. So let me pause there.
Great. Thank you, Femi. Thank you. Now the other question also has to do. So also we have 25 questions, and we just have
just a minute on the insurance. There's something called consequential issues.
Yes.
Now on insurance, if we're able to get into and get an insurance company to take up consequential issues there, it covers a lot of every other thing. So you don't have to, you don't have just to take them in a piecemeal. And that is one thing that our insurance companies in this country because the Company Act is very clear. All that is important is for you to send in a proxy within 48 hours, and the voting on the proxy will be captured by the registrar and used at the AGM. So it's not compulsory that BC should be my proxy or Sonny also should be my proxy. So if you have a way of submitting your proxy to the registrars, which is online, please do it.
Yes.
What is important is the voting on the proxy.
Yes. Thank you. I've done that myself severally because it's cheaper, it's convenient. Thank you very much. Next question is also for BC. So many legal issues. Question for BC, please. Additional clarity on the delegation of authority to a CEO. What are the key elements? Wow, this looks like a training session.
for free, for that matter.
Thanks to IoT.
Okay. Yes.
Additional clarity on the delegation of authority to a CEO. What are the key elements in this regard? Very briefly, this BC.
Yes. So it's important to define, first of all, the board delegates its authority to the CEO, to the authority to act on the day-to-day, but it's important to also now then determine those matters that the CEO can act without reference to the board, those matters in respect of which he can act and then inform the board that he has acted, and those matters for which he needs specific board approval. So, those would have been defined before now. So it's not a question of, expenditure limits, how much can he, but what can he do? What level of hiring, for instance, what level of borrowing, what level, to what extent can he commit, can he or she commit the enterprise? But what I said, when I referenced is that those things now have to be reevaluated, because the agility with which decisions were taken in January, will be different from that which you need now. So
information that is applicable and let that work for you. Anonymous attendee said, thanks BC Ademi, a lot of companies are holding virtual meetings now where their articles have not, yes, exactly, been provided for that. So updates to the frameworks as we had discussed. Abibola Wright said, my sister, to add to the question, Femi, presumably the realignment relates to skills. What specific skills will be required that boards do not typically have to Femi? Those skills, those skills for the environment to foresee that you told us in your previous remark. Everybody is asking specifically, can you just address it for us, for all the players on the board, be it chairman, the director, the secretary? Some of it were also addressed by BC. So just sum it for us briefly.
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, here are the few clear truths about these things. This is not like reinventing the wheel, really. I mean, the organizations in Nigeria have shown some of those skills already in terms of peer leadership. One, they've improved their communications at all levels, communications with staff. They've held board meetings, which we've seen some exemplar organizations provide examples for others. But we have to understand that when we describe the issue of a board, and most importantly for me, the focus is on the role of directors, right? You are going to look at it within the gamut of the MSMEs. This is an example. In order to respond. In terms of the negative to the
the session offline. Shola said, what extent have various regulators risen to the challenges of COVID-19? Do we have virtual regulations now, or is there regulatory slumber? With this question, I would like to take from the previous conversation you just had, when you were talking about the courts. Something came to my mind. I said, Dubai International Financial Center, they have Dubai court. The DIFC court does not sit physically, they sit virtually. And they litigate over a lot of cases.
You don't need to go that far. Just stop in Kenya. Immediately COVID happened, Kenya moved virtually every single thing onto it. In fact, if they hear your case today, by tomorrow, you can actually download and read all the judgments over there. Wonderful. Now you take a look at it and say that the real good thing about the COVID thing is that certain things are clear to us. Our healthcare issues, healthcare, education, agriculture, and the justice system becomes matters for rapid development, because it then clear to you that you cannot, I said this once in June when I was speaking at the lecture, I said you cannot build a thriving economy without a thriving society. The anchors of your society are those things around your justice system or whatever. You cannot run an economy that's going to be fast, where you don't have the culture, you're just able to accept you at the same time at which you are doing things. But here's what I see in this whole thing. Let me give you a practical example. If you want to protect your business right now, you should be able to exercise those bankruptcy laws to protect yourself against creditors, right? But you cannot do so. I stand corrected by BC here, because the rules, I'm sure that there's a particular bill from the Business Recovery and Arbitration Panel, which is still in the National Assembly, which hasn't been looked at for a while now, which tells you that your business rescue solution, which should have been a matter of law, cannot. So accountants can come in and look at things for you. Process. It is important that as businesses go through their risk and corporate strategy review sessions, The issues they identify, the private sector therefore meets with the public sector to start discussing issues. Another one which I'm interested in as a director.
Thank you. But just to finish, when his name is now, he said, only have physical strategy session and deliberations. Now, next question is for Remark, sir. The current situation presented by COVID-19, the company nothing of sending out electronic to shareholders. Surely welcome to such electronic. I guess that issue about your holding teams, I would leave it with business that just got to remain unknown. And then I'll also ask Mosu. So what's yours? The last one about shareholders. So after this, you just take up, and then that will close the Q&A. The other questions we're not able to answer. Sincere apologies, but we actually had like 26, and I think we've done more than half of it within the time we have. But I promise you, we, the panelists, will respond and type an answer. That would be a fair negotiation. So BC, take it up.
And have meeting virtually, but I think I've had said that you can't remove the place of physical interaction. So I mean, we're social beings, and at some point we need to interact. There's body language, there's, because I mean, so we're having a Zoom meeting. I can decide not to show my face and, roll my eyes when you're speaking and just show my shoulders and just, so those things, and body language is critical. Chemistry is critical, when human beings gather and they're trying to take decisions, So I think, yes, whilst virtual meetings are good, they're only, as you would say, they're only to enable us take decisions, given the times that we're in. It shouldn't be the default, So what would advise and what we advise our clients to do is to ensure that there is a place for physical meetings. So you can say that at the minimum, you can decide to have at least two physical meetings per period, but that's not to say that everything should go virtual, because really and truly the chemistry on the board still requires some physical interaction.
Thank you. And before Samosu speaks, Vita Abule, I saw that you raised your hand. We're not taking raised hands, but I think the host will attend to you. We've noticed your request. Samosu.
Okay. The annual report being sent electronically is just environmental requirements. The law does not back that. The CAMA does not really back that. The CAMA is saying that an annual report will be sent to every shareholder. And when we discovered the increasing cost of glossy annual report, we advise companies to have two segments of annual report. One glossy because of marketing, and the other one will be in a paper form, which is lower grade paper to shareholders. But the companies are actually not making any profit, to the detriment of shareholders. Those whom you are sending electronic one to will be using their own money to get the information, which of course you would have sent to them. Because some of these annual reports are in volume. I got one yesterday, which is about 400 and something pages. And you want to see the working and the baking of all the figures which came out of the annual report. So therefore, when you are sending out an abridged form, which of course will come under a very low quality paper, you are not spending much. But what has happened, which we have discovered now, is that the registrars will go to the company and say, we want to do this that is costing less. At the end of the day, they share it either 30, 40. And when this is given to shareholders, majority of them will rupture your system and will not open. And we are saying, no, we don't want disk. Print an abridged form and send to shareholders. But then there's still a caveat for that. So many shareholders were asked, do you want a paper annual report or you want electronically? You sign in. If you want electronic annual report, they will send it to you. Those that want paper will be sent paper annual report too. And that has settled the issue, except, like I said, the disrespect for seed providers, knowing fully well that at the advent of shareholding, there are so many illiterates, our fathers, who bought into this and they do not know how to operate computer, and you are riding on them until you show respect on every shareholder of a company, and that's the time that we will be on the same page of working for the interest of.
Thank you very much, Mosu. Before, as part of my wrap-up, I would also want to appreciate my panel. I've had a fantastic conversation.
Yes.
Very, very wonderful. And we also want to thank IOD. It's not like my vote of thanks, but as I just bring things to an end, there are some charts that I think they're so good, I would like to share them. Mr. President, a lot of commendations to IOD for this very innovative session, and many people appreciate that. And a goodwill message from our first Vice President, Dr. Jide March, is that IOD is committed to the advancement of corporate governance, and it continues to be the voice from the continent, adding a lot of changes in the area. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you, Madam First Vice President. And then Aki said, thank you, IOD. Takeaway, amongst others, is that COVID-19 creates the moment of truth for organizations. Sometimes it's existential as boards start to get more proactively involved. Mr. President, another kudos to you. And then, Sinuade always said, thank you, panelists. I would like to ask you on the IOD, kindly make the Q&A from this session available to do as well to grapple the ramifications. This has been, Ademola Oshinobi said, this has been quite useful, optimal returns on invested time. Thanks, IOD. Thumbs up to the panelists and thumbs up to everybody too. For me, it's been a wonderful time. We've had wonderful conversations, and I was just smiling as I listened to all those free consultancy advice from PC, from Femi, and also from Sawosu. So wisdom on how to relate with shareholders, and I think many of the directors will appreciate that very much. Mr. President, thank you for this invitation and making it possible for us to be here today. DG, God bless you and your team for hosting such a beautiful session, and all the participants, you made it all. Your comments I give to IOD. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Closing remark of this. I do not want to get into the issues that have been discussed, but I need to say very clearly that our Institute of Directors Nigeria is extremely happy to have put this program together, just like we did yesterday. Are you there?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, just as we did yesterday, when we host the leadership strategies for navigating the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We co-hosted it with Oando yesterday, discussed a lot of issues of leadership. Today, I'm very, very happy. You may have also noticed that there are 80 participants at this session, which justifies the fact that we decided to use the webinar to conduct this program. Of course, it saved us a lot of money in terms of hiring halls and other things, to ensure that we have a good program. I would like to also mention the fact that the issue of independent directors on boards has been brought to the fore now, because the ability to have people who are really skilled in ensuring or in helping companies to move forward. And IOD obviously runs a very good register, and I would like to implore that all those who are on this platform, and indeed the companies that have joined in, to take advantage of the register that we keep in the IOD for independent directors. Obviously we'll take note of the discussions going on or the questions being asked, particularly with the use with the CSC. We shall ensure that we connect or we engage the CSC in carrying forward some of the suggestions made by Mr. Olufemi Awoyemi. Also, the legal parts of the HR practice, which shall very engage. PC, I would like to thank you most especially for your comment on the need to have constant engagement and communication with and consultations with the shareholders and indeed within the board, various boards. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. IOD intends to run all its future programs on present and future technologies, so that we can reach out to many more people. It's nice to know that 80 people are at this session. I'm not so sure if we had a physical meeting, we'll get as many numbers, attending this session. Overall, I think it's been a fantastic time. I wish to thank you all on behalf of this Governing Council of the Institute of Directors. We hope you will join us again at our next program. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. The panelists will say a very brief thank you for coming and doing justice to the matters we have discussed. The President has thanked us all. I just want to just correct. We actually had about 160 participants eventually for the program, about 160, but we're now at about 120. So I say thank you to everybody. It's worth your while. We promise that the IOD is going to give more to members and non-members as well as we move along. It's our duty and our role to continue to deepen the knowledge, especially in the area of corporate governance. It's even more so that we are now having these challenges that nobody envisaged. But like the panelists mentioned, it is now a matter of business continuity. And part of our business continuity is also to be able to provide these opportunities for our members to deepen their knowledge. Thank you very much, everybody, and I wish you a very wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, panelists, BC, Femi.
Thank you, Lucy, Dr. Lucy.
Wonderful working with you. Bye.